Ehud Barak, welcome to 7:30.
Thank you for having me.
How much has October the 7th changed Israel?
So it changed Israel. Until now, I should tell you, the Israeli collective is under certain kind of trauma as a collective. There is very strong feelings of strong pain and very intensive rage and a kind of deep frustration, a feeling of humiliation and calls for revenge. And you know, I understand it, it's humane. I can understand it on individual level, even on collective level, but it is never a good recipe or good guidance for leadership or for strategy. At the top, the leadership should keep certain psychological, I don't know how to call it, detachment, a kind of capacity to look reality, however tough, painful, and frustrating it is in its very nature, and still to keep a cold-headed decision-making that serves the wider picture of our national interests.
The response now includes conflict with Hezbollah in Lebanon. What is Israel's endgame in Lebanon?
There is no simple endgame. That's I'm one of the harshest critiques on our government. The absence of clear strategy is the story also with the Hamas, not just with Hezbollah. We are for a year there. And somehow our government missed the point that the only way to defeat Hamas and Sinwar, its head, is not by killing more Gazans, innocent Gazans, or killing more fighters of the terror. The only way to really defeat him is to create a situation where he is not in power anymore, Hamas is not in power anymore, and cannot threaten Israel. The same might apply to the Hezbollah. We now attacked the Hezbollah very heavily in Beirut. It has cutting the heads of its kind of structure. And we now operate near the border to make sure that the infrastructure there that were prepared for similar attack to the one that Hamas had done in the south to be executed by the Hezbollah in the north. But having said that, this will be completed. But Israel cannot have an endgame in Lebanon. We cannot reoccupy Lebanon. And we cannot be there for years. Even with Iran, we have to respond to compelling need. We cannot. No sovereign would have accepted such attack without responding very heavily. And we can do it in many ways. We can destroy certain oil production or a big port from where it is exported mainly to China. We can hit the missile production and drone production, which are mainly go to Russia. And we can even try to damage the nuclear plant. But there is no simple way to Israel, however powerful, to erase Iran. Iran is only 70 times bigger than Israel in geography and 10 times in demography. So they're not going to disappear.
Iran's already fired 180 or so ballistic missiles against Israel, but that's only a fraction of the missiles they have. Can Israel realistically defend itself against wave after wave of attack from Iran?
Look, both the Iron Dome, the David Sling, and the upper echelon, which is the Arrow and Super Arrow against the ballistic missiles, they are all better than any other nation or else. A huge achievement of our technology and engineering and far-sighted kind of program that worked for 20 years to prepare for this moment, more than 20 years. But having said that, I don't think it's clever to go into all the details of the exact question you asked. Just to remind you, we cannot hit Iran without crossing two neighboring countries. We have to choose which one. We cannot even reach there without having certain kind of understanding with our neighbors, which are Arabs, Muslims, and do not want to participate in any kind of war that we feel a need to go into.
In the wake of recent successes by Israel, by the Netanyahu government against Hezbollah, are you concerned that those successes will further embolden the far right-wing elements in his cabinet who are advocating expanding the settlements in the West Bank and further suppressing Palestinian resistance there?
For sure. For sure they will do it, but they do it even without any successes. They even want now to resume settlement, Israel settlement in the Gaza Strip. And, if we wait for too long, they might raise some ideas that we had some promise in some corner of the Bible to get some parts of Lebanon as well. They are messianic, Jewish supremacists, racists of the worst type. I compare them sometimes to the Proud Boys in America, those who were behind the 6th of January event. So think of American president who would nominate one of these leaders of the Proud Boys to be Secretary of Treasury with certain formal roles in the Pentagon, and the other one to be Secretary of National Security, Homeland Security. That's crazy, but that's exactly what Netanyahu did, and he did it because he needs a tight control of the survival of the government, because if there is even a ceasefire in order to exchange the hostages, and which ceasefire for 4 months, for example, immediately it will become a day of reckoning, because people will demand to establish a national investigation committee led by a Supreme Court judge to find who is responsible for the worst day in our history.
In January this year, you said that Israel was losing its legitimacy. Now, since then, we've had very high civilian casualties in Gaza. There are now civilian casualties in Lebanon. If you said that about Israel in January, what do you say now about Israel's legitimacy?
Now we keep losing legitimacy in the world. Look, if someone would have told us that we will be still stuck in Gaza after a year, no one would have believed it. If someone would have told us that in leading American universities there are massive demonstrations against Israel, and some of them are organized by professionals, some are financed by the anti-Israel or anti-Semite group. But still, I am now in the United States. You can feel there is something is simmering there that you cannot easily fight by however effective propaganda, because people look immediately who is the underdog there, and they have short memory about what caused it. It's all caused by the Hamas. Hamas are responsible. Even the citizens in Gaza, we warned once and again, a day after day after day, go to the south, we will not touch you, it's open. And 800,000 moved. The other 300,000 remain in Gaza. They remain because they had a handgun to the temples by the Hamas, who wanted deliberately to use them as human shield. I don't think that Israelis are happy to see innocent Gazans to be killed. Probably individuals here and there, but not, for sure, not the mainstream of Israel society. But I can tell you that I spent decades in uniform in Israel, and I know that it happens in wars. Wars is an ugly situation, but those who are attacked and have to fight for their survival see it as something that we have to be ready to look at the eye, to stand and to win.
From your perspective, why shouldn't Australia, while supporting Israel's right to self-defence, also recognise a Palestinian state?
Look, I think that it's not the right time to deal with it. I mentioned earlier the mood among Israelis, and no political leader will raise it right now. But, in a way, in the long term, the two-state solution is the only solution, because we have, between the sea and the river, we have 15 million people, half of them Jews, half non-Jews. At the end of the way, we do not need two-state solution in order to make justice for the Palestinians. We need it in order to protect our own security, our own future, our own identities. We prefer that it will not be discussed right now before we manage to deal with Gaza. We manage to remove Hamas from our border, to remove Hezbollah from immediate border, and to create an atmosphere of more trust and more kind of cooler blood. The blood is boiling now. It's not a good recipe for leadership and statesmanship, but you cannot ignore it. And it's not the right time to deal with this issue.
Ehud Barak, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for having me. And best to the Australian, you're lucky. You've been surrounded by so many oceans.